Civil War and Reconstruction Test Review. Welcome, everybody. It's time to review for our, I guess you could say, our second to last test of the school year, and that is Civil War and Reconstruction. So let's go ahead and begin. Number one, what is sectionalism? The difference in geography and industrialization that shapes the culture and economy of the North and South and divides it into two regions. We see this difference actually as early as the establishment of the Jamestown colony and the Plymouth colony. Both were settled in different areas of the country with different geography, climate, resources, and that really shaped the way that they would evolve as colonies and then later on as states as throughout U.S. history. And one of those regions in particular really relied on slavery for its success. Number two, this is the rights of states to make their own local laws, and that of course is a vocabulary word, that is states' rights. Number three, what was the Southern economy primarily based on, and that was agriculture, and really leading into number four, the Southern economy was very profitable because of slavery. They didn't have to pay workers a wage to work in their fields, and so all that money that's saved by not paying somebody to do the work is really pure profit for slave owners. For number five, it says which issue were the acts above the most concerned with. So we have A, Missouri Compromise of 1820, B, Compromise of 1850, and C, Kansas-Nebraska Act. And all of these are concerned with spreading of slavery into the new Western Territory. Number six, what led to the violence in Kansas in 1854? Well, Kansas was given the right to vote whether or not they wanted to be free or slave, which of course nullified the Missouri Compromise that said that area of the country could not have slavery. And as a result, Kansas voted for slavery, which led to several years of intense violence, otherwise known as Bleeding Kansas, which was really a prelude to a much bigger civil war that would begin with the firing of the Confederacy on Fort Sumter in 1861. Number seven, what was the Supreme Court's decision in the Dred Scott case? The court said that African Americans had no rights because they were not citizens. And actually, Chief Justice Roger Taney went even beyond that. He was really sort of insulted that Dred Scott was standing in the courtroom before him. He was very racist and believed that blacks were property, were nothing more than livestock, and therefore not citizens, not human beings, and Dred Scott certainly had no right as livestock, as property, to be standing in his courtroom suing for freedom. Number eight, which choice was a result of Harriet Beecher Stowe's book, Uncle Tom's Cabin? And that is number one, many people opposed slavery that didn't mind it before, and Harriet Beecher Stowe was part of a family that was very active in different reform movements of that day and age, like women's rights and the banning of alcohol and of course anti-slavery. And this book she wrote really for an audience of the North. That was who her intended audience was. She wanted to convince Northerners who really were just kind of, indifferent towards slavery. They didn't think about slavery the way others maybe in the South did, because slavery was not something that was really in their backyard. They weren't seeing slaves every day. They didn't have to be reminded that another part of their country was engaging in this despicable practice. And so this book was written really to just kind of wake Northerners up and make them aware of the horrors of slavery and that it was something that needed to end. And so that book was really written for those people that kind of turned a blind eye to the evil that was going on in the South. Number 9, this person was an escaped slave and conductor on the Underground Railroad. She also made repeated trips to the South to lead more people to freedom, and of course that's Harriet Tubman. Number 10, why did Northerners agree to the fugitive slave law as part of the Compromise of 1850? They agreed to it because California was able to join the United States as a free state, and Northerners were very happy about that because that would give them more power in the House of Representatives and the Senate, as more representatives from a slave state would be in Congress as a result of California entering as a free state. Number 11, list 3 things Abraham Lincoln and Jefferson Davis had in common. Well, both were strong leaders and presidents during the Civil War, and both came from Kentucky. Number 12, put the following events in correct sequence: the election of 1860, the Fugitive Slave Act, and Kansas-Nebraska Act. And of course, the correct order of that would be Fugitive Slave Act, Kansas-Nebraska Act, and it should say election of 1860. Number 13, which event caused South Carolina to secede from the Union? And of course, Lincoln's election in 1860 was really the final straw. And convinced many Southerners that Lincoln was eventually going to order the end of slavery, and so they were just simply going to secede or leave the Union and begin their own country. Number 14, where did the first shots of the Civil War occur? And I mentioned that earlier. That was Fort Sumter. Number 15, this battle cut the Confederacy in two, and that was the Battle of Vicksburg, and we're going to kind of go down into number 16, part of General Winfield Scott's Anaconda Plan, whereby Vicksburg was essential to having a successful Anaconda Plan, where the Atlantic states, the states all along the Gulf of Mexico and the Mississippi River were all blockaded, and Vicksburg was taken control by the Union Army. And as a result, Vicksburg, which is situated right on the Mississippi River, that allowed Winfield Scott's plan to be successful, because it cut off Texas and Kansas and states, southern owning state or slavery owning states, off from the rest of the South, which was an incredibly important accomplishment. And so number 17 lists 3 advantages the South had over the North during the Civil War. Well, the South had much better hunters. Many of them were born in areas that still relied on hunting for their meat, as opposed to northern areas that might rely more on manufactured products for their meat goods. So they had experienced hunters. They had good military leaders that we saw with Robert E. Lee and Stonewall Jackson. And they believed that they were fighting for their own land, and that the North was invading their land, and they were defending it. Number 18. Why was the ironclad a unique and valuable weapon? Well, it was valuable because it could resist damage from enemy fire. It was made out of iron, and those cannonballs just bounced right off its sides, and was allowed to continue on with its attack of other ships and other enemy fire, because they were able to resist that cannonballs from the enemy. Number 19, what document freed slaves in Confederate states at war with the Union? And that was the Emancipation Proclamation. And something that's important to remember about the Emancipation Proclamation is that it did not free all the states in the country right away. It only freed those states in the South that were rebelling. Did free slaves in border states that had stayed in the United States and hadn't seceded. Number 20, put the following events in the correct sequence: Battle of Bull Run, Southern states secede, and Battle of Antietam. So first the South secedes from the Union. Then the first major battle is Battle of Bull Run, which is followed by Antietam. Number 21, define total war. Total war is when the target, such as civilians, land, livestock, etc., is destroyed and forced to surrender. So everything is on the table. Nothing is spared. Everything is destroyed. And we certainly saw that in Sherman's march to the South, where he's going to burn and destroy every plantation and plantation home and plantation crops and things of that nature, and then free slaves as he cuts a swath, really, of destruction through the South from Tennessee all the way to the coast of Georgia. All right. Which amendment abolished slavery? That's the 13th Amendment. Number 24, the Union Army was made up nearly one-third of immigrants, primarily from Germany and Ireland. Number 25, list the ways that African Americans helped the Union's army. They fought in combat, worked as carpenters and cooks, and served as scouts and spies. Number 26, which side did around 20,000 American Indians serve? And they served in both the Union and Confederate armies. Number 27, what did the 14th Amendment guarantee? It guaranteed equality under the law for all citizens and granted citizenship for all persons born or naturalized in the United States. And of course that meant the millions of slaves who were brought to the United States were now legal citizens. Number 28, list 3 ways women served during the Civil War. They served as nurses, they ran stores, and planted crops. Number 29, what invention showed how destructive the Civil War was to people all over the country and world? And that was the camera. The camera, by the way, especially Matthew Brady, who became a very important photographer during this time period, when they would display images or pictures, rather, photographs of the battlefield in museums and galleries in the North, people could see firsthand just how destructive and horrific this war really was. And that's otherwise people really had no idea unless they maybe read about it in the paper. And certainly isn't like today where you can have instant feedback on places engaged in warfare around the world. All they knew was what they saw in the paper or in these photographs from Matthew Brady. Number 30, define sharecropping. It is the practice of renting from a landowner and paying rent with a portion of the crops produced on that land. And of course, that is what will substitute or take the place of slavery after the Civil War is over with and during the Reconstruction period, which and sharecropping will be a part of the South for many decades after the Civil War. Number 31, who was born in Ohio, graduated from West Point, and was a general in the Union Army, and that is Ulysses S. Grant. Number 32, why do we celebrate Memorial Day? It was a holiday created after the Civil War to honor and remember all of the soldiers who had died. Number 33, which amendments did the Confederate States have to approve before they could rejoin the United States? So over a process of about 12 years, and that's how long the Reconstruction period lasted, states could not re-enter the United States, re-enter the Union, unless they approved the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. Number 34, what is segregation? The separation of people, usually by race, in schools, theaters, and railroad cars, and of course this will become the way of life in the South following the Civil War. Even though slavery is abolished, they are now legal citizens of the United States, and all males are, including freed slaves, are given the right to vote. Another form of separating blacks and whites in society was created, called segregation, and so that will go on for another 100 years or so, really until Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks addresses that issue in the 1950s and 1960s. Number 35, what did the 15th Amendment allow for and gave all citizens the right to vote regardless of race?